All these years later, am I the ruler my mother wanted me to be? Now, we face...
Dishonored 2 starts out some 15 years after the conclusion of the first game. Emily Caldwin is no longer a child and sits on the throne as the Empress of Dunwall, just like her mother Jessamine did before her. The rat plague that cursed Dunwall in the first game has been put to rest, the whale oil industry is in full flow, and prosperity has returned to Dunwall. However, a shadow looms over Emily's reign in the form of the Crown Killer, a serial killer who is systematically killing Emily's political opponents. Of course, suspicion falls firmly at the feet of Emily and her father and protector, Corvo. State affairs still have to be attended to while Emily and Corvo try to uncover the identity of the Crown Killer, and the anniversary ceremony of Jessamine Caldwin's death must be given its proper attention. During the ceremony, the Duke of Serconis, Luca Abel, turns up unannounced in the guise of a show of respect for Emily's mother, but his real intentions are revealed when he introduces his special guest, Delilah Copperspoon. Copperspoon claims that she is actually Delilah Caldwin, half-sister of the assassinated Jessamine and rightful heir to the throne. With the aid of Luca Abel, Copperspoon manages to stage a coup. Corvo and Emily try their best to fight off the assault, but can't hold back the inevitable. At this point, Arcane Studio cleverly gives you the choice of who to play as. Picking one means the other is turned to stone by Delilah, and with the scene set, the events of Dishonored 2 begin to unfold. Upon escaping the besieged Dunwall Tower, you eventually meet up with Megan Foster, captain of the ship the Dreadful Whale. Foster wants you to help track down the game's token mad scientist Anton Sokolov in return for helping you discover more about Delilah Copperspoon. With an accord struck, you promptly set sail for Karnaca to track down Sokolov and begin your quest to bring down Copperspoon. The story in this sequel is a good setup for the rest of the game. It once again gives you great motivation to get your revenge by introducing truly unlikable villains in Luca Abel and Delilah Copperspoon. The only criticism I would have of Dishonored 2's story would be explaining the motivations of Luca Abel. Is he infatuated with Delilah? Is his motivation land and power? It's not made explicitly clear. He is a great character though nonetheless. Delilah Copperspoon's motivations, however, are more clear-cut, being the illegitimate daughter of Jessamine's father, Euhorn Caldwin. Growing up, she had to witness Jessamine live in the lap of luxury, while she had to stay with her mother in the maid's quarters. You can understand her resentment and subsequent bitterness. The story does a decent job of moving the game's events along at a good pace, and the introduction of more NPCs to interact with is a welcome progression over the first game.
You deserve that, Ramsay.
Dishonored 2's graphics took a big step forward in the 4 years after the first game's release. Just about every aspect of the game's appearance has been noticeably upgraded. Textures are much sharper, light and shadow are much more polished, some of the jaggies and texture pop-in that I noticed in the first game seem to have been tackled, and draw distances are more in line with a game released much more recently. Distant objects and backgrounds are now much more attractive. As the rat plague is now over, the streets and alleys are more alive with general citizens milling about on their daily business. These NPCs look great, and their interactions with the world around them and each other add even more depth to the look of the game. As in the first instalment, character models have a semi-caricature look to them with pronounced features, but they have also had a significant glow up or glow down depending on what way you look at it. Their faces are more beaten up and weathered than ever, but in a good way. The first Dishonored managed to create an amazing atmosphere, and this sequel manages to enhance that feeling. The juxtaposition between rich and poor is even more evident, which helps world building no end. Dishonored 2's graphics are immensely improved over their predecessors and scores 22 out of 25. Dishonored 2 follows in the footsteps of the first game and once again sees the player taking the stealth action route. This time though, things get mixed up with the choice of tackling the game as Corvo or Emily. Both characters have their strengths and weaknesses and both play in a slightly different way due to their respective outsider bestowed supernatural powers. I feel that the story in the game in general is actually set up to favour you playing as Emily. She has a more personal link to Delilah, and being exposed to the territory she rules over is a good perspective to put on your playthrough. Emily also brings a host of new abilities to the table, giving you even more choice in how you tackle your missions. I'll talk more on those abilities later in the review. Once you've made a decision between Emily or Corvo, the game begins proper. You are pointed towards meeting up with Megan Foster, captain of the Dreadful Whale, the ship that takes on the hub area role, just like the Hound Pits pub did in the previous game. It's aboard the Dreadful Whale where you get your operation briefs and skiff transport to the start of your next mission. And it's on those missions that you will start to notice the improvements made over the first game. To begin with, the levels are a fair bit bigger. You get much more of a sense of freedom in Dishonored 2. The levels almost feel open world-like in their scope and not just in a flat, sprawling sense. Verticality has also been hugely ramped up, giving you even more choices for exploration and mission completion. There seems to be a lot more buildings you can actually enter too. You will find open windows all over the place, and you will find yourself getting distracted as you wonder what lies beyond a distant door or two. Levels also feel much more alive. This game is a lot more NPC dense, making the homes and businesses you sneak through feel more lived in. This is no criticism of the first game, however. It simply reflects well the changed circumstances that have occurred in the world in the last 15 years. You will also witness some weather effects in Dishonored 2, which is a nice way of mixing up the feel of the levels. On one level you'll see a sandstorm that wafts in every so often, changing the visibility of the area. It messes with your vision and that of the guards, creating threats and opportunities at the same time. Levels are almost like extra game characters. They have distinct personalities, are big, packed with choices, and are a joy to play in. Levels are also densely populated with guards, and luckily you have plenty of ways to dispatch them, either lethally or non-lethally. The chaos system makes a return in Dishonored 2, so playing as a cold-blooded killer or a pacifist are both options again, and both have their benefits in the form of unique story arcs and endings. Once again, combat is the star of the show. Stealth is as satisfying as ever, maybe even more so, as enemy AI has been tweaked. Guards are a bit more alert to your presence, they will look intelligently for you when spotted or when a body is discovered, and their patrol routes seem to be more nuanced and not quite so predictable. There is also more of them, making picking your moment to strike more strategic. Hand-to-hand combat has also had a bit of an overhaul. It's still as visceral and gory as it was in Dishonored 1, but it feels like it's more viable to do a high chaos combat only playthrough now. The tools given to you are very effective in cutting through multiple enemies, allowing you to get out of situations that would have led to overwhelm in the previous game. Overall, the combat feels a bit more balanced as a consequence of the changes made, and is still a huge amount of fun. The Outsider once again makes an appearance, and of course that means more supernatural powers for you to purchase with the runes you find laying about the levels. Corvo is decked out with the same set of powers as the first time around, but with some additional slants on these powers via upgrades. However, Emily can be equipped with a whole host of new powers, including Far Reach, a variation of Blink that acts like a grappling hook, Doppelganger, which enables her to produce clones to distract or take out enemies, Mesmerize, which creates a distraction enemies are drawn to, and Domino that allows you to link multiple enemies together, where a kill or knockout on one affects all. As far as one character being better at stealth or combat than the other, the decision becomes a little easier, as both are proficient no matter what discipline you favour as a player. Both Emily and Corvo are more than capable when it comes to kicking ass loud and proud, or kicking ass without anyone knowing. As well as the supernatural powers you can obtain, bone charms make a return and are used in the same way as the first game for some passive buffs to your character. However, things have been spiced up with bone charm crafting, a system where you can extract traits from a bone charm, and with the right powers unlocked you can stack the effects, creating some frankly OP combinations of buffs. As far as weaponry goes, the trusty short sword pistol crossbow combo is back, but this time once they're upgraded to the max you have the option of using a masterwork blueprint to give you the most deadly versions of each weapon type. It's a nice addition and gives you more reasons to play an out and out combat run. The selection of death-dealing gadgets has been increased over the first game too. You have a ton of new bombs and bolts to play with, but rather than buying from an NPC in the hub area like in the first game, these armaments are now purchasable through black market shops that are scattered through the levels. It further encourages you to explore the much larger levels. Gameplay in Dishonored 2 sticks to the successful formula of the previous game, but everything gets turned up to 11. Levels are huge and detailed, combat is bigger and better, better, stealth is more addictive and satisfying, the sheer amount of player agency in the game is mind-boggling and will keep you coming back for more. Gameplay in Dishonored 2 gets an outstanding 25 out of 25.
Who do we have here? I wonder why your face is covered, lady.
That's my business.
I felt that the music in Dishonored 1 was a bit workmanlike. There was nothing particularly wrong with it, it just didn't leap out and grab me. Fortunately, the music in this sequel has had a boost and now adds to the atmosphere of the game well. Tension and adrenaline is built in appropriate places and the soundtrack generally enhances the experience. Voice acting in the original game was good. It wasn't exactly packed with dialogue, but what was there was decent. However, I feel in this follow-up the voice acting is a more mixed bag. Our main protagonists, Emily and Corvo, are now fully voiced, and I'm not sure that was a great decision. In my Corvo playthrough, I did find myself wishing he was the mute hero I played in Dishonored 1 again. Some of the narration type comments I feel are unnecessary and don't add anything to the game. It's like the character's internal monologue was being said out loud and it felt a bit unnatural. Sometimes less is more. Other voice performances in the game range from serviceable to good. Overall, the audio in Dishonored 2 is a case of swings and roundabouts. The music has definitely undergone an upgrade, but voice acting is hit and miss. Audio in Dishonored 2 scores 21 out of 25.
No, Emily. Megan is right. I can make electricity move from one side of the room to the other, but Delilah is beyond my understanding.
Unlike the first game, Dishonored 2 now has a new game plus mode. Your assigned powers, learnt bone charm traits and found blueprints all come across with you to a new run, which opens up brand new possibilities, especially in early game. With some games, New Game Plus is a nice to have, but in Dishonored 2 it's almost like playing a different game. The options that open up to you can change so much. And just like the first game, you can dip into standalone missions if you want, but this time you can choose to have all abilities open to you. There is also a very moody black and white mode to play with that turns everything, yes, you guessed it, black and white, but leaves all the blood red still. It's a very stylish way to play. With huge new levels to play in, replayability was good regardless, but with New Game Plus and some other welcome additions to how you play, Dishonored 2 is worth every penny you pay for it and scores 23 out of 25 for value.
And you look like someone who goes into places where you don't belong. Wanna help me with something? You scratch my ass, I'll scratch yours.
To say Dishonored 2 is more of the same would be doing the game a great disservice. Just about everything is not only bigger but better. Arcane have done a great job of making this sequel feel new and fresh while still holding on to everything that made the first game so great. Dishonored 2 is a classic game that deserves to be in the library of all gamers in 2024 and scores an impressive 91 out of 100.
Clapper soldiers, there's an interloper in my home.